I was asked to join a feedback lunch with leadership. It was a setup. They took turns quoting my Slack messages, twisting my words, saying I had tone problems. When they asked if I had anything to say, I just smiled, hit send on a pre-scheduled email CCing the board, and watched their faces as the subject line appeared on their phones. A culture of silence and surveillance begins with, I joined this company 4 years ago. It was still small then, maybe 50 employees total. I was hired into operations because I'm the kind of person who just gets things done. No drama, no politics, just fix what's broken and keep the machine running. For a while, that's what it was. We were lean, chaotic, but honest. People disagreed, argued, tested ideas in real time. I liked it. I helped shape some of the company's structure. I rewrote onboarding materials, built team processes from scratch. I stayed late and worked weekends sometimes, not because I was told to, but because I wanted things to work. I felt proud of what I helped build. Then we started growing. That's when it shifted. The leadership team began to close in on itself. Meetings got more formal. Suddenly, everything had to be on brand. Feedback was encouraged, but only if it was flattering. Questions had to be framed in the most cautious, non-threatening language possible. If you said the wrong thing, even politely, someone from HR would check in. I saw it happen to others before it happened to me. A project manager mentioned in Slack that a decision was made without team input. The next week, she was put on a PIP. A dev lead said we should diversify hiring. He was gone a month later. No one said anything publicly, just phrases like role realignment or better opportunities elsewhere. I started keeping records. I didn't think of it as revenge. I just didn't want to feel crazy. So I began screenshotting things, saving emails. I created a folder in my personal drive titled Insurance. Just in case. I never shared it. I never mentioned it. I just saved what I saw. At first, it was small. A Slack thread that got deleted after someone asked about PTO policy inconsistencies. A calendar event labeled Team Feedback Session that ended up being a disciplinary meeting. But over time, the pattern became obvious. Leadership didn't want pushback. They wanted obedience dressed up as collaboration. I kept doing my job. I stopped sharing ideas unless asked. I gave only safe feedback in public. But privately, I kept recording. About 6 months ago, I started writing something more structured. A document. I called it a culture of silence. It wasn't a rant. I kept it clinical. Dates, names, actions, documentation. I linked back to everything: Slack messages, emails, calendar invites, deleted comments, recordings where available. I had screenshots of execs contradicting themselves. A few audio clips from Zoom calls they didn't realize were still recording. I never planned to use it. Then I got the invite. It came from the head of people. The title was Leadership Feedback Lunch, Culture Leaders Only. The invite list was just me. That was the first red flag. But I accepted. I knew better than to decline something like that. I also knew to prepare. I scheduled an email to send at 12:15 p.m. The meeting was set for noon. That gave me 15 minutes to decide whether to cancel it or not. I walked into the room and saw right away that it wasn't what they claimed. No food, just 3 execs, COO, head of people, and VP of product, each with a printout in front of them. The printouts had my name at the top. They didn't ease into it. They went right for it. The COO said something about recent concerns around tone. The head of people said they'd been gathering feedback. Then they started reading, out loud, my Slack messages, one after another, printed and highlighted. Things I'd said months ago, things taken completely out of context, lines where I'd push back, even gently, questions I'd asked. They called it negative energy, said I was undermining leadership trust. The VP of product used the word combative. I just sat there, listening. They weren't yelling. They weren't angry. It was worse than that. They were calm, rehearsed, like they'd done this before, like they were trying to build a case to push me out, but make it look like a professional decision. They asked if I had anything to say. I looked at the clock. 12 p.m. I pulled out my phone and moved the email up by 3 minutes. I hit send. The subject line was simple. A culture of silence and surveillance begins with leadership, internal report. It went to the full board, 2 external HR consultants, and the company's legal counsel. I didn't CC anyone from the executive team in that room. The email linked to a Drive folder, and it was a 38-page document, fully cited with attachments. Timestamps, examples of how honest feedback had been rebranded as insubordination. Instances of Slack messages being deleted. Recordings, meeting invites with misleading titles. Screenshots of execs mocking employees in private threads. The kind of stuff that doesn't just look bad, it shows a pattern. As I watched them glance at their phones, I saw it hit. The COO stared at his screen. The head of people's face dropped completely. The VP of product turned red, then pale. I stood up, thanked them for their time, and walked out. No one followed me. No one said a word. Later that day, I got a call. From legal. Not HR, not my boss. They asked if I was available to discuss a matter of importance. I told them I'd be happy to after the board responded. I don't know how far this will go yet, but I do know one thing. They tried to isolate me. They thought I was alone. They forgot that I'd been watching, listening, and preparing for months. After I sent the email, things moved fast, but not toward resolution. Toward pressure. The kind of slow, suffocating pressure they apply without ever saying anything out loud. The day after the lunch, I showed up to work and my access badge didn't work. Not fully locked out, just downgraded. I could get into the building, but not the executive floor. No notice, no message. I had to ask IT, who looked uncomfortable and said, "We're working through some access protocols." Then my calendar started emptying. One by one, meetings I was supposed to be in disappeared. Project invites revoked. Files I had created were now owned by others. When I emailed to ask, no one responded. Not even, "We'll get back to you." Just silence. By Friday, I'd been removed from 3 projects without explanation. That weekend, I got an email from HR. Not the internal head of people, this was from one of the external consultants I'd CC'd. She said she'd reviewed my report and that the board had received it with seriousness. She scheduled a meeting for Monday. But then Monday came. The meeting was canceled 20 minutes before it started. No reschedule. That's when I knew the board wasn't going to handle this directly. They were going to wait it out. Let the storm pass. Protect the execs. Pretend it was all perception or communication gaps. I wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes, but not surprised. What did surprise me was how quickly the leadership team pivoted. Within a week, they started reshaping the narrative. First, it was whispers that I was burnt out and might be stepping away soon. Then someone said I was considering other opportunities. Suddenly, I was being transitioned without ever having agreed to it. They started telling people I was leaving, that I had asked for time off, that I was not feeling aligned. And here's the thing, it worked. People who used to chat with me stopped reaching out. I saw colleagues pull away, not out of cruelty but fear. Nobody wanted to get dragged into whatever this was. One of my closest teammates messaged me privately, "I'm sorry, I saw what they're doing. I just can't risk being next." I didn't blame them. The company didn't fire me. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they started killing me slowly, professionally. I was locked out of decisions, ignored in threads. I became invisible in meetings. Someone else even presented my own workflow at a leadership sync without my name on it. But I wasn't done. I started updating the board. Once a week, short emails. Clean, calm, professional. Each time, I added one more detail they hadn't seen before. A voice recording. A deleted Slack message recovered from cache. A copied email thread where leadership openly mocked employee concerns. I never speculated. I just showed facts. After 3 weeks, one board member responded. It was short. "Thank you. I've requested a meeting with legal." I didn't hear more after that. But I saw signs. The head of people went on sabbatical the next week. Then an anonymous internal survey was circulated. First time ever. It was from a third-party org, not the usual PR-coded in-house stuff. Then the COO disappeared from the all hands. And then came the kicker. Someone forwarded me a document, an early draft of a reorg plan. It didn't list me by name, but my position was gone. Absorbed. Redundant due to structural shift. Same for 3 others I'd worked closely with. All of us had pushback on leadership at different points. I still hadn't been spoken to directly. No HR call. No board update. No clarity. Just slow erasure. But the thing is, I wasn't panicking. I had kept everything. And I wasn't trying to keep my job anymore. I was preparing something else. Because I hadn't sent everything yet. And the board? They'd only seen the beginning. 3 days after I saw that reorg draft, I got a letter. Not an email. A letter printed, folded, and hand-delivered to my desk in an unmarked envelope. It said my role was being consolidated as part of a broader organizational restructure. It said I had 14 days to assist in the knowledge transfer process. And it ended with the classic line, "We thank you for your contributions to the company's growth." No meeting, no conversation, just a piece of paper. I walked to HR. The internal team looked like they'd been coached within an inch of their lives. I asked if there was a formal PP, an exit package, anything in writing besides the letter. They said the final materials would be shared by the end of the week. No answers, just polite stonewalling. Then came the twist I didn't expect. A former coworker reached out from a burner email, someone I hadn't talked to in over a year. She'd been part of the company's early growth, but quietly left after a realignment period. She told me she saw my name mentioned in a private Slack channel that she somehow still had access to exec-only or close to it. She sent me a screenshot. They were talking about me like I was a virus. The head of people had written, "We need to manage her out before she poisons anything else." The VP of product had replied, "She thinks she's clever. We've seen this before. Make it boring, drag it out, and she'll lose momentum." It hit me like a punch. I had expected erasure. I hadn't expected them to openly mock it. Not in writing. Not with such confidence. But it got worse. In the same thread, someone attached a document. A draft FAQ for internal comms titled Departing Employee Transitions. Under my name, my real name, they wrote, "She was increasingly out of sync with the culture we're building. We wish her the best." This hadn't gone out yet, but they were planning it. And now I had it. It changed everything. Up until then, I was just sending documentation, passive records, professional reports. But this was new. This was proof of intent. Not just what they did, but what they planned to say about it. It was reputational, and they were trying to get ahead of it. I forwarded the file to the board. No commentary this time, just the document, the Slack thread, and a timestamp. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time, someone who'd left the company under similar circumstances, but had never gone public. She'd once told me she had recordings of exec meetings she wasn't supposed to be in. At the time, I hadn't wanted to hear them. Now I asked. She sent me 3 files. In one, the COO is heard saying, "If they push back, we outlast them. Most people can't stomach the discomfort." In another, the head of people says, "No paper trail, just the usual soft isolation process. She'll get the hint." And in the third, the one that made my stomach turn, someone asked what to do if the board pushed back. The response, "They won't. They're not watching closely." That's the whole point. I had all of it now. Internal plans to discredit me. Private Slack threads mocking the process. Audio of senior leadership admitting to slow, intentional, undocumented removals of staff who spoke up. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a pattern. And I wasn't the only one. 3 others who'd been restructured over the past year, I reached out to them. Quietly, carefully. 2 were still under NDAs. 1 wasn't. All of them told me the same thing. They'd tried to raise concerns. They were pushed out quietly. Nobody had listened. Until now. Because now I had their stories. And soon, everyone else would too. I spent the weekend organizing everything. Not out of rage. Not out of panic. Just calm, quiet work. I made folders. I cross-referenced files. I created a timeline linking each person they pushed out to matching behaviors, questioning decisions, offering feedback, pushing for fairness. Then I did the one thing they never expected. I made it public. I didn't leak anything reckless. I didn't post screenshots or break laws. I wrote an open letter. 1 page. It didn't name names. It didn't speculate. It just told the truth. I explained how feedback was welcomed in theory, punished in practice. How employees who asked fair questions were slowly erased. How leadership used culture to hide control. How those with dissenting voices were boxed out, discredited, removed, with no explanation and no accountability. At the bottom, I added a line, "If you've experienced this too, you're not alone." And then I hit publish on LinkedIn. The post was up for 17 minutes before I got a call. Not from HR, not from a board, from a journalist. A former coworker had shared the post, and someone at a tech publication picked it up almost immediately. Not a big outlet, but big enough. They asked if I'd be willing to talk off record. I said yes. Then another person messaged, then another. By the next day, the post had thousands of views. And then the DMs started. A dozen former employees, people I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out with their own stories. One had been fired after asking why parental leave was different for managers and entry-level staff. Another was let go after raising bias concerns in a product review meeting. All of them said the same thing. No explanation, no process, just quiet removal. I compiled everything into a report and sent it directly to the journalist. Within a week, the story ran. The headline was sharp. Inside the tech startup where feedback means you're next. They didn't need to name the company. Enough people recognized the language, the details, the leadership tone. It spread fast, internal Slack threads, industry discords, Twitter. That same week, I got a call from someone I didn't expect, one of the board members. A quiet one. He said he wanted to talk. He didn't apologize. Not really. But he sounded shaken. Said, "We've clearly missed things. We're initiating an internal review." I said, "It's already started." Because while they were trying to figure out how to contain the fallout, I was already one step ahead. The external HR firm I had CC'd, they opened an audit. Turns out, this wasn't the first company to use culture to justify illegal terminations. And now, with so many ex-employees stepping forward, they had enough to trigger a pattern investigation. The COO resigned quietly 2 weeks later. The head of people was transitioned out with no announcement. The VP of product? Still there. But from what I hear, barely. His name didn't show up on the next org chart. And me? I took my time. I accepted a severance offer that came through 2 days after the article dropped, generous, rushed, and full of legal noise. I had a lawyer look it over. We removed the NDA. They agreed. They just wanted me to go away. I didn't. I didn't post again. I didn't give interviews. But I didn't disappear either. I started a newsletter. Quiet. Anonymous. Just short essays on corporate silence, surveillance, how companies twist professionalism into compliance. People subscribed. Some shared their own stories. Some used their names. That was the real revenge. Not the headline. Not the fallout. But the silence breaking, the pattern cracking, the thing they were most afraid of, because they wanted me to feel isolated, unstable, disposable. Instead, I became impossible to ignore. And now, they watch their inboxes every morning, wondering what I'll say next. And they should, because I still have more. And I'm not done yet.